Hi, Cami.
Hello, Pat. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Well, you and I just got done doing some kind of business talking stuff. So been thinking about all the fun things that we're going to be doing in 2025 with the Confident Grief Coach. But today is we want to talk about some of the stuff you've been going through. You just went through the death anniversary of your dad.
Hmm.
And I just shared with you my mom's anniversary. It'll be 4 years on the 16th. So we're just like right in the midst of our parents are bookending us in
Yeah.
this conversation. So um, I'd love you to share. You shared a beautiful post about everything that's been kind of showing up for you on this death anniversary, whatever we want to call it, about your dad.
Yeah, I'd love to share a little reflection with what's been on my heart. And I think overall this concept of passing time without our loved ones has just been in conversation with the grief community in my circles lately, especially with the new year. We're fresh into January and we're coming out of the holidays, and this is like a really heavy time of year for the grief space, at least in my body and with a lot of the people that I'm talking with. um but yeah, so yesterday was my dad's 16th 16th year. So 16 years ago yesterday he died. And for those who don't know my story, I'll just briefly share that I was 11 years old when he died, and he had ALS. So he had been sick for months leading up to his transition day. And his body was just deteriorated. The disease just consumes you, and he was paralyzed. He couldn't speak, he couldn't move. Like, I'm glad that the progression was pretty quick compared to people who are diagnosed with ALS. It can be drawn out from like 5 to 7 years. And luckily, my dad's was pretty quick. So I think by the time he was diagnosed, it was within a year, or yeah, about a year that he was just really sick. So anyway, it happened pretty quickly. And he was in hospice at this point. And I remember that day. I was with my mom and my sister, and we got a call from family members who were already with my dad. And she said that, we have to go visit dad. This is gonna be the last time that you're gonna see him. And I remember, like, 11-year-old me, I'm like, no, I don't want to go. I'm not going. No way, leave me home. And she really encouraged me, like, you're gonna want to say goodbye. I know that you'll be glad that you did later. So we went along to hospice, and we get there, and basically he was hanging on for us to arrive. So we rush in the room, and we get there, and like within seconds, like, he's gone. Like, it was such
Wow.
a fast transition. My mom said she went in there before me and my sister went in there just to kind of scope it out. And she said that as soon as she got next to him and said, Steve, I'm here, we're here, he opened his eyes and looked at her, and then, like, released. Like, that was it. He was actively going at that point. So she got me and my sister in there, and I uttered a goodbye. And just the sight of his body, which already looked so dead and skinny, like there was nothing left to him at that point. Um, yeah, anyway, it was just, I was just remembering this whole scene of 11-year-old Cami, like, watching all of this go down. And the feelings that my body and my nervous system remember from that day. 16 years later, and I still get anxiety leading up to January 9th, because it's like that anticipatory grief that we talk to so much on this channel of, like, when is it going to happen? You know that it's getting close because you know they're not doing well. And just feeling that anxiety each day leading up to whenever it happens. So I definitely have been feeling that. And then typically how I've been experiencing after the death day is like my body, like, just collapses. Like I go into a depression. It's like my body wants to go into that cocoon space and just be with this new reality. So I definitely still feel that even 16 years later, my body and my nervous system feel that grief and that experience that I've had even so long ago. So yeah, that's been on my heart. And as an adult and having 16 years of living life without him, I have this totally different connection with him and this totally different relationship with him. And I think it's David Kessler who says that death does not end a relationship, but it changes it, right? So even though he's physically not here, I
Mhm.
still have this spiritual and this emotional connection with him. And so feeling that grief in my body yesterday, I woke up feeling like I just need to connect with my dad. I woke up also with a sore throat and a cough, which we know from Chinese medicine and what you talk with a lot in the Confident Grief Coach School is this five element theory with Qigong. And that is that energy sits in our lungs and it affects our respiratory system. So having woken up with this congestion, I just thought, wow, my grief is congested right now. I really need to create some space to
Yeah.
release. So yeah, I took some intentional time. I lit an incense. I have a little altar with my dad's photo, and I have this little cards deck. And my mom just got me this for Christmas. It's been fun to play with, but it's a little deck with birds in there, and they each have a message.
Oh,
And I
cool.
thought that I would sit down with this because I feel that my dad speaks to me through birds. Usually it's chickadees, but now being in Kentucky, I've been seeing bluebirds everywhere. So anyway, I sat down and I just asked my dad if there was something that he wanted me to know today. And the card that I pulled was quail. And when I read this card, I just like I felt immediately like his presence and his warm energy like speaking to me through this card, and it just brought me to tears. But the most notable things that I'll share is that this card from Quail is talking about family bonds and travel and acting on your dreams and reaching your goals and all of that stuff. But the line that really stood out was noticing what's right in front of you. So the family bonds and noticing what's right in front of you. And I immediately knew that that was my dad saying, "Hey, I'm here. Like, I'm here all the time. I'm not far from you." It feels
Mhm.
like that sometimes. It feels like all of these years have gone by and we've missed out on so much together. And I'm here. Like, nothing was lost. And that soul part of me, that spiritual connection that I have with him just felt so connected and close to him even while that little Cami 11-year-old part of me feels so far away from him. So just holding that duality has been a challenge you know, and a space where, my grief, I have so much grief for my dad and for my experiences and for just what he went through and what we all went through. And there's also this deep, strong connection that I have with him, even more so in a way that I don't think I had with him when I was 11. So, yeah, I was just sitting with all of that
Oh,
yesterday, and
beautiful.
it was really beautiful. It was really beautiful. And yeah, I feel that hug from my dad, and like he's cheering me on with my travels and my adventures here, especially because he knows that I'm doing this for a very purposeful reason, which is to create a grief retreat one day. So obviously that has to do with my experiences and nurturing myself through grief and wanting to share that with others too. So yeah, that's what I really just wanted to share as far as like my dad's
That's
death
so
anniversary, and
beautiful.
just to speak to that passing of time, because as we know, there's so much cultural narrative around the timeline of grief and how we need to be over it within a certain amount of time. And if you're still crying or still missing them after X amount of years, that there's something wrong, that you should be ashamed of where you're at in your journey because, they would want you to be happy by now, and all of these stories that
Oh,
come
yeah,
up. And I,
all those wonderful little comments that we get. Well, wouldn't they want, well, of course, our loved ones want us to be happy. Of course, but we know through research and through our lived experiences, our education in the grieving space, is grief doesn't go away. Grief is love. So that is never going to go. And sometimes the grieving, the act of, is going to show up. And for whatever reason, so maybe it is that warm hug from your dad. I just shared with you, we were on a call, and then I said, well, let me just go and like get ready for this session. And I went out to fill my cup of coffee, and our coffee maker said the time was 11:11, which it wasn't. It's 10:11 here where I live, but it was 11:11. And that's the message that I get from my mom. Whenever that shows up randomly, I know that she's saying, just keep the course. You're doing what you need to do. I'm here. I'm your guide. And so much that of what I do, and yours is the grief retreat. Now, it all stems from our lived experiences.
Yeah.
So with my mom, she was a grieving mom, but I was born into a grieving family, but no one ever talked about it. And so that was my passion, is I want to be able to share that with the world. And it's been 4 years for her. So I'm very, how old? 4 years. I was in my 60s when she died. But all of a sudden I started feeling it. I just started feeling like the tears that are just kind of sitting back. And then you kind of question, what is this? Is it sadness, or is it, and I choose to think of it, it's love. So that those deep feelings that we get, the emotional, the depression, the sadness, all of that, to me, it's love. It's all encompassing love. And so we miss their physical beings, but yet, like your dad, he deteriorated because he had an awful illness, a very challenging illness. My mom, I've watched her die for years, for years. And so it was like, but then when it came, it didn't matter. It was grief.
Yeah.
And I missed
Yeah.
her terribly. Irregardless of our ups and downs and all arounds during our lifetime, it's so much. And I just feel that they are the warm hugs. You and I have a very spiritual connection with our loved ones, and we believe in that. And I just wanted to share, I've talked about this. I'm a certified celebrant, and I've been having so many celebration of lives to officiate over the last 6 weeks. So I met with two brothers that their mom had died, and she was in her 80s. So we met last night, and the sweetness of their grief, I mean, it just was so sweet. It was so beautiful.
Mm.
And, they shared so much about this beautiful woman. And then I asked them, because I said, well, was she spiritual? Because I like to know the person. I want to really connect with the person who I'm honoring, and honoring their family. And I said, oh yeah, she was really spiritual. And she had a vision one time of these nuns that came to her, but she wasn't like very religious or anything. They didn't go to church when they were young, but that I could just sense that it was okay for me to open up. And I'm like, have you had any signs since she passed early this month? And they said, there's some really random stuff. He said, but the one son goes, I'm going to cry telling you this. And he's like a big, burly, bearded guy, right? Macho, you think? He said, I'm going to cry when I'm telling you this story. She died on, I think it was January 4th. And they didn't even realize that he and his brother, they're the only siblings, didn't even realize this, that when they started going through all the paperwork to write the obituary, she and her husband got married on January 4th, and he had died like 10 years earlier. And they're like, wow, that was just like she reunited on the day that they united.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Can you imagine? And so that just brought they said we can look at her passing so differently knowing that now, that she's with dad, and they had been married for 50 years. And
Wow.
that was the day that she left this physical earth. It was such a piece of healing for them, to know that's okay. It's okay. But yet the grief is profound,
Yeah.
so profound. And you mentioned the timeline. My dad's been gone 35 years, is it going to be? 1990, February, next month. But I feel like the time that we have on this earth in our physical bodies is like a blip in their spiritual bodies, right? It's like the timelines don't connect whatsoever. So what might have been, 35 years with my dad, it's like, boom, that's just, when you're not here and you're in that other energetic form, it's a blip.
Yeah.
It's a blip.
Time isn't a thing. Time doesn't exist for that
Right.
space.
Right. So for us to feel those feels deeply, regardless if it's 15 years, 12 years, 4 years, whatever, it makes sense because it's a blip. That time is a blip. And so it just allows us to honor our grief, our love.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that there are anniversary dates so that we can honor our grief and our love because they are one and the same.
Yeah.
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 Oh,
Yeah.
big
And that's
hugs
gonna
for you. Oh, I know.
thank you. Yeah, and hugs to you too with your mom's anniversary coming up also. I'm wondering if you could speak a little to your experience with just this idea of like passing time. Because I know, speaking with so many people when you're in that fresh stage, and I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is in the first year of her partner loss, and she was expressing this kind of this dread around like imagining her life going on without him, and how do you deal with the fact that these years are just going to be going by, and imagining 10, 20, even like one day when she's 90, what that would be like when he's not there with her when they were planning this life together. um and in this conversation I had this memory of that Green Day song that's "Wake Me Up When September Ends," and there's a line in there that's like, when his fathers come to pass, 7 years has gone so fast. And I remember being fresh in my dad's grief and hearing that line and thinking, 7 whole years, how in the heck is that going to feel? Like, what is that going to be like when I'm here now and I'm deep in this crazy new reality of like, what is life? To
Right.
think about 7 years from now, like I could not have imagined that. And I remember reflecting on that song when I was 11, being like, I wonder how things will be different. I wonder how, if it will be easier, if it will be harder, like what will that experience be like? And looking back on that now, I think, oh gosh, like it's hard to even predict. Like you don't know what it's going to be like. You don't know what life is going to be 16 years after the fact.
Bless
Excuse
you.
me, grief coming up here.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if you could speak to your experience of time.
Oh my gosh, like now it's like 35 years. I didn't even realize, right? It'll be 35 years. 35 years. I was a 30-year-old, 30-some-year-old when he died. And I look back now and I think, where did all that time go? And I can remember his passing as specifically as you remember your dad's. I remember every minute. And so sometimes I do have to go back and just like process through that again. But then there's so much time that it's not a part of my life, right? He's a part. I know he's always there, but it's not a constant.
Yeah.
Um, and then my mom, who was in my life so much longer, 30 more years than my dad was, um, she's so constant. But it's
Mm.
only been 4 years, right? So I don't know if that timing has to do with the amount of time. Um, and I was just thinking that again, that blip, all of a sudden before you look and it's like it was just a blip. And then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, it's been this many years. And it doesn't make the loss less. I don't know if that makes sense. It doesn't make it less. But what I have found is living in the present moment is where our healing really can begin. So when we talk about, like in the breathe coaching model, the breath and just being present in the breath, you being present in the grief and the effect that it had on your body, I think that's where it is. Because when we start looking like, oh my gosh, what could have it been?
Mm.
We don't know.
Yeah.
So and that grief will come perhaps more deeply because we're thinking about not going to be here for the birth, not going to be. And yes, do I have, like, I wish dad, I wish you could have met, your great grandchildren. I think you would have just enjoyed. I wish you could have seen some of this. But yet, if I stay in the present moment, I'm not dwelling on that. And I think when people have a hard time, like, processing their grief, they may be stuck in the past or in the future. And to get
Yeah.
grounded into the present and breathing through that is where then time doesn't matter. Time doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, it does. And that was kind of a bit of the experience I was having yesterday, sitting in the present moment, able to connect with my dad, able to reflect on from this grounded centered place in the present. I was able to revisit what 16 years ago felt like for me.
Yeah.
And there's a time and a place for that, right? We're totally allowed to go there and to unpack that a little bit and to explore that. And I noticed when I let myself go there, like, I mean, I was feeling the loss so heavily. Like, little Cami is there upset. She's staring at her dead dad's body. Like, of course there's going to be tremendous grief in that space. And it's okay to be there sometimes. But what was helpful for me was my mindfulness practice of being in the moment. And that's partially why I like to light an incense as well, because that scent reminds me that here I am now. Like, I'm not there, I am here. And I can think about that and I can revisit that and I can honor that, but here I am. And in doing so, that opens up to so many other possibilities of here I am, and my dad is still here with me. Like, I would not, if I'm staring at with my 11-year-old self in that moment of the past of when he died, he's not there in that scene, in that memory, in that grief space. He's gone, he's far away. And if I'm operating from that space and I'm thinking about 16 years without him and everything that we missed, all of the losses that came from that, that is to me so much harder to honor if I'm not
Right.
present. But
Yeah.
if I'm present in that, I can hold that beautifully. I can hold that with the reverence that to me that experience requires, while also holding space for the comfort and the connection that I have here and now, and thinking about, like, okay, we don't know what the future is going to be like, but I've got a whole lot of life to live, and I don't know what that's going to be like without my dad. I don't know what our connection's going to be like. I can think about the future from this grounded present place and hold everything kind of at the same time, if that
A
makes
both
sense.
and. It is. It's
Yep.
a both and that, yes. And so I love what you said. It truly is. We can be grounded, but give ourselves, when we're even like in that present moment, to allow ourselves to journey
Yeah.
back to that time and reflect upon the past how many years. And that journey, which actually creates a lot of insight. I think about what has transpired since my mother died. It's the school. It's all these, 50 students who have come through and been certified. It's all this wonderful stuff that we've done in 4 short years, right? I have no idea what's going to happen in the next 10. But I get in that present moment and then I connect with her and know that she is here with me. That umbilical cord never got severed.
Yeah.
The energy of my love of my dad, he's always with me. I may not consciously be thinking about him all the time, but when I'm centered and in that present moment, I am. He and I are one. And I
Yeah.
think that's the gift that we can give as grief coaches and grief professionals, is helping the people who are, really in the throes of their grief to just center even for a couple of minutes. And I love you light incense. That's your thing. Some people might light a candle. Maybe they go, my walks in nature, you're much like me. We go out there and I don't need earbuds in. I don't need music playing. I just want to breathe in the scent. And then all of a sudden, and showers are my best place to kind of get centered. So there's so many cool things that we know can bring us into that centering place and embrace our losses and feel the feels and not have to think that there's a timeline, because there isn't. There's none. Let's just erase all that from the whiteboard. There's no timeline. And so 60 years from now, we'll be grieving. Well, I don't know if I'll be here, but children, 60 years, will still feel the loss of their beloved parent.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank
Yes.
you so much for sharing. And I know the other thing that you did is you journaled, and I just want to encourage people, you may not be a journaler like to write. Some people go, oh, I just don't. But even just having a conversation out loud or, that kind of thing can be so helpful to just bring you into that present moment and process through what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
All feelings are okay. Let's leave it with that. All feelings are okay. Embrace it and know that getting into the centered place, you're giving the air and the acknowledgement and the honoring that you need. And then in a couple breaths, you may be moseying on and doing life in a
Yeah.
different way.
Yes. Beautiful. That's a rich place to end, in that space of groundedness, centeredness, and from that space we have the capacity to hold our grief and to hold the connection and the honor of remembering our people and remembering what that time was like spent with them, and also thinking about the future and what that could be like too. Like all of it comes together in this moment, and finding that thing that's going to anchor you here, whether it's being in nature, whether it's journaling, whether it's a card deck, or
Yeah,
using the breath. Like all of these things are this doorway of opening up to this potential that is here in every moment. And like my dad said, like they're with us all the time, whether or
yeah,
not we choose to like open our eyes and really see what's in front of us. They are here. There's no possible way that they could be gone, because we know that energy never is lost. It's just transformed.
right.
So where do you see your person now? And for me, it's in the birds, in the trees, in each breath that I take, that I'm connected with my dad, and finding that place of anchoring in the present with them, I think is just so profound and healing. So
That is so
mm.
beautiful. So, well, hopefully you can enjoy a few birds, even though you're getting another storm coming through down south there. But, and I know that as you spend time with yourself, again, the grief does cause, challenges into our breathing system. So just taking good care of yourself and loving yourself. We need to honor ourselves as the people who are grieving, in addition to honoring the ones who have passed.
Mm. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. See ya.